Let's go. Greetings and welcome back to Basketball Rules Expert, the show where we take National Federation of High School basketball rules. We lift them off the printed page, breathe life into them, simplify, clarify, amplify, so we can take the rules with us onto the basketball court. Greetings again, everybody. My name is Greg Austin with abetterofficial.com. I've been a high school basketball official for over a decade. Consider myself to be a basketball rules expert. This show is all about helping you on a journey to becoming a basketball rules expert as well. As we like to always do, thank our fantastic show supporters: Jeet Gulati, Jose Lansang Jr., Brian Mackey, Tyler Matlock, and Thomas Hennian. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show, you can always purchase us a coffee. I'll put a link in the show notes below. All right, fantastic. Today we're going to be looking at case plays directly from the case play book. We're going to be concentrating on rule number 5. So there's different ways we can go about the process of looking at case plays. We can open up the case play book and say, okay, case play 1.1 and start from there. Or we could say, look, I want to focus on technical fouls, go to that section. We're looking at plays. I want to focus on definitions. I want to focus on violations, etc. Let's jump into our very first case play and let's spin the wheel. See what we got. The head coach from Team A requests a 60-second timeout to rectify a timing error. The referee grants the timeout to investigate the matter, but determines that no correction can be made. The scorer then informs the referee that Team A cannot be charged a 60-second timeout, as they only have one 30-second timeout remaining. What do we do in that situation? Since they have no 60-second timeouts remaining, and there was no timing correction made, Team A will be charged their remaining 30-second timeout, regardless of the amount of time consumed, right? A common sense resolution to the situation, right? Teams must request a timeout to examine whether a correctable error situation has happened. In this instance, the coach requested the timeout for the officials to examine the situation. In the end, no adjustment was made in the game, so the coach is therefore charged with that timeout. And since they had only a 30-second timeout remaining, that is what is used. Brings up the scenario, I suppose we could think about it. What if they did not have a timeout remaining? Feel the crew is making a correctable error mistake, goes to the timer or the scorekeeper and timer and says, I need a timeout, they're making a mistake. Horn, 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 right? Ball before the ball is put in play. And the coach is essentially requesting a timeout for the examination of the correctable error situation, right? It puts us in we get into a gray area part of the rules in that instance. Can they legally make this correction? Are they going to, or this request for a timeout? That's an interesting conundrum. If the coach is out of timeouts and yet goes to the table to request a timeout to have the crew look at a correctable error situation, are we going to, in any event, assess a team technical foul for an excess timeout in that instance, even if the correction is made by rule? I think we are in a sliver of the rules where we do not have a ruling. But if we look at our original case play, common sense prevails. the coach is charged for a 30-second timeout since that's all they have remaining, right? Simple, straightforward. This is not a complex play, not that demanding. Let's look at another case play. Let's pull one from the wheel. A1 is dribbling the ball in his or her backcourt when A, the Team B head coach requests and is erroneously granted a timeout by an official, or B, the Team A head coach is yelling side out offensive instructions to his or her team and the official stops play, believing the coach requested a timeout. All right, so A1 is dribbling the ball in the backcourt or on the court. Team B requests a timeout. The officials erroneously grant the timeout to Team B. And in the second situation, the Team A coach is giving offensive instructions to his team, 5 out, 5 out. The officials misinterpret and grant a timeout to the Team A coach. How do we handle those two situations? Interesting, right? So when the Team B coach requests the timeout and the officials erroneously grant the timeout, Team B gets a timeout and must take the timeout, even though the officials granted it erroneously. So we don't have a situation here of saying, all right, timeout, timeout, Team B. Oh, wait a minute. Never mind. I made a mistake, so what have you, right? We are going to grant the timeout by rule. And we're going to eat that. Obviously, we've made a mistake. Team A was in control. Team A will get the ball at the spot nearest to where it was when the timeout was granted. That's the correct ruling on that play. Now, in the other situation, offensive coach yelling instructions, 5 out, 5 out. Officials erroneously grant a timeout. In that instance, we do have an inadvertent whistle, and no timeout shall be granted in that situation. So, two similar situations, but in the first one, inadvertent whistle is not an option. Let's take a look at the ruling on the play. In A, Team B is entitled to use the timeout since it was requested and granted. Once granted, it cannot be revoked, and it's charged to Team B. All privileges and rights permitted during a charged timeout are available to both teams. Okay? So, interesting the dichotomy between these two. One, inadvertent whistle is not an option. The timeout was granted, even though it was erroneously granted by the officials. Once granted, it cannot be revoked and is charged to Team B, right? And then in the second situation, an inadvertent whistle has occurred. Team A was not requesting a timeout, right? That's the distinction, and therefore should not be granted or charged with one. Play is resumed at the point of interruption. So, in the first situation, timeout was being requested and erroneously was granted. Therefore, the team must take the timeout. In the second, a timeout was not being requested, but was erroneously granted. In that situation, we have an inadvertent whistle by rule. So interesting to put the two play scenarios next to each other. As we've discussed in previous episodes, I have been that official who granted the timeout to the opponent just based on their matter-of-fact approach to request, hey, I need a 30. I've been that guy. A point of emphasis this year is the granting of timeouts and ensuring that either one of the 5 players or the head coach is making the request. And so we could, I suppose, also say, well, we need to ensure that the coach is actually requesting a timeout. And let's move now to another wheel, spin of the wheel. Let's find another play scenario. A1 fouls B1. The official who made the ruling moves towards the reporting area. A2 immediately signals the free official for a timeout. Momentarily thereafter, the scorer notifies the ruling official that A1 has fouled out. First of all, a request for a timeout shall not be granted until all reporting activity has taken place. That's just a basic. Coach, I hear you. I know you want a timeout, but let me report, right? Fouls on A1, pushing, 2 free throws, and then we can address timeout requests in this instance. So, also, the scorer, and it sort of opens the window as to why this is a procedural thing. The scorer then says, hey, ref, A1 has 5 fouls. Okay? So we cannot grant, in that situation, we cannot grant a timeout, even though A2 requested it, because we need to replace the disqualified player before a timeout can be granted, right? Need to be aware of that. That's the first order procedure. Coach, A1 has 5. I need a replacement. If we need to go through the process, give me a horn. 15-second interval begins. At the end of the 15-second interval, a replacement should be at the table to come into the game. And at that point, we can properly grant a timeout if the timeout is still requested by the crew. So, hey, can I ask you a quick favor? If you're finding this video content valuable, take just a second. Hit the like button below. Really helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps to get the video in front of more basketball officials so that we can all get better together. Thank you. Let's take a look at the ruling on the play. A1 must be replaced before the timeout is granted. And let's look at the comment. Comments on case plays and on rules and notes, etc., can often give us the proper guidance about how to handle these situations. The first responsibility the ruling official has is to report the foul to the scorer. Officials should not be hasty in granting an immediate timeout after the game has reached a point that players may begin to foul out. Rather, they should take a second or two after reporting the foul to see if the scorer may report that a disqualification has occurred or should occur. Right? So the takeaways, right? First order of responsibility is to report the foul. If we are at an end of game situation, officials are counseled to say, give it a moment, let the scorer have a chance to work, right? If we are close to a player disqualification situation, anticipate that, give them a moment. Don't be in a rush. Always don't be in a rush. The ball is dead. Nothing's going on until we make it so. So we have that window of opportunity to grant the timeout. We don't need to ever be hasty in a dead ball situation to grant a timeout. Let's spin it one more time. The score is tied at the end of regulation. During the overtime period, the official scorer informs the referee that Team A had an additional point in the fourth quarter that was not counted in A. The referee reviews the scorebook and recognizes where a point was not properly credited to Team A. Or B, the referee does not have definite knowledge that a point was not credited to Team A, right? So during the overtime period, the official scorer informs the referee, hey, ref, we did an accounting, and actually back in the fourth period, an extra point should have been granted, right? So what do we have in that situation? An extra point should have been granted before the end of regulation, which would have led to a situation where the score was not tied. So should overtime have been played, right? The rules, though, give us the correct adjudication of the play. Once overtime has begun, and this is a fundamental concept we can take with us onto the court. Once overtime has begun, it will be played. Once overtime has begun, it will be played. So even if it was immediately after overtime started, we toss the ball to start overtime, it's tipped into the back court, team controls the ball, official starts their count, and hey, ref, we found a bookkeeping error, and there should have been a point in the fourth period, etc. Right? So, basic concept: once overtime has begun, it will be played. Absolutely. Okay. So now, if there was a bookkeeping error in the scorebook that has been discovered, bookkeeping errors can be corrected at any point. Okay, so the point may be added in this situation and shall be added in this situation. So our selections, though, are: the referee reviews the scorebook and recognizes where a point was not properly credited, or the referee does not have definite knowledge that a point was not credited. Let's take a look at the ruling. In A, the referee adds a point to Team A's score, and in B, the referee does not add a point to Team A's score. In either case, the referee continues the overtime period to completion. Interesting. Okay, so if we have definite knowledge, obviously we're going to add the point. And B, the referee does not add a point because they don't have definite knowledge. Maybe the visitor book says, no, we don't have that situation. The home book does. Referee needs to make a determination about whether that was an accurate recognition of a point of a discrepancy in the book. So that's our ruling on this play. But a key takeaway that we always need to take with us onto the court is: once overtime has begun, it will be played. If the score needs to be adjusted based on a situation, a bookkeeping error. Now, obviously, if the officials failed to award a three-point goal when a player attempted a three-point goal, let's say near the end of regulation, right, the correctable error time frame comes into play, and that would be the determining factor. Okay, it's not a bookkeeping error in that situation. Bookkeeping errors can be corrected at any time. Once overtime has begun, it shall be played. Tearing it down, let's spin the wheel one more time. The appeal of the coach of Team A to an official made while the ball is dead and the clock is stopped is made when it is too late for correction of an error. That's vaguely worded. I suppose the ball is dead. The officials are about to administer the throw-in. The coach from Team A says, hey, you're making a mistake. There was a correctable error. Free throws should have been awarded there, etc. And so I guess the question here is a timeout being requested as a result? Let's take a look. Following the conference, the 60-second timeout remains charged to Team A, and they are given the privilege of utilizing whatever time remains. The official will terminate the discussion with the coach immediately upon making a decision. If the discussion takes more than 1 minute, only one 60-second timeout is charged. Okay. All right. So this is a formal request by a Team A coach to the official. I want you to review this correctable error scenario. Basically, whenever a coach is making that request, they are actually requesting a timeout. And in this instance, there's clarification that, first of all, if the officials take 3 minutes to sort out whether a correctable error has occurred, still only a 60-second timeout is charged to the coach. This is a poorly worded situation, but properly clarifying ruling on the play. Move on to the next one. Following a violation in the first extra period, the timer beckons the referee to the table. The timer informs the referee that by mistake, the period started with A, more than, or B, less than 4 minutes on the clock. What is our situation? So we have a timing situation. Maybe we're doing the game at a collegiate venue, and the timer is used to collegiate rules, and they put 5 minutes on the clock. The period has just started. The overtime period has just started. And maybe the clock shows 4:32, and the timer informs the officials that, hey, ref, we started with 5 minutes. Sorry about that. What do we do in that situation? Our other scenario is less than, right? So same scenario. Now, instead of 4:32, there's 3:32. There's 2:32 because they only put 3 minutes on the clock. How do we rectify this situation? By rule, seems like a common sense approach would be in order here. Our ruling in A, if the mistake is discovered before the clock reaches 4 minutes, the clock shall be set at 4 minutes and play resumes. Oh my goodness. If discovered after reaching 4 minutes, no correction is allowed. Wow. In B, the appropriate amount of time shall be added to reflect a 4-minute period. Okay, so following a violation in the first extra period, the timer beckons the referee and says, ref, the period started with more than, right? So we have the 5-minute scenario. Let's say it's at 4:32. If a mistake is discovered before it reaches 4 minutes, the clock shall be set at 4 minutes and play resumed. So in A, at 4:32 is showing on the clock, the timer put 5 minutes up by mistake. We set the clock to 4 minutes and run from there. Wow, I definitely would have got that wrong. Holy Toledo. And in B, in B, where it was, 2:32, because only 3 minutes was put on the clock, the appropriate amount of time shall be added to reflect a 4-minute period, right? I assume that would mean, okay, we're going to add 1 minute at that point, and the clock shall now show 3:32. We're not going to reset up to the 4-minute mark, but is that, would that be your interpretation here as well? Holy cow, that is some crazy stuff. I definitely would have got that wrong. I would definitely have gone with, we're going to put 3:32 on the clock, but the rules, case play says in that instance, obviously something we need to avoid, right? And, have the proper amount of time on the clock when we start overtime, although, right, if we think this through, at some levels, and in some situations, league rules, etc., sub-varsity games may have 7-minute periods. I know we have a league here locally. JV and freshman games are played with 7-minute periods, and the overtime is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So you could have a situation where, in that instance, 4 minutes was put on the clock by the timer who's used to doing varsity games, and at let's say at 3:45, hey ref, Hey ref, we made a mistake. It should have been 3:30. What do you want me to do? Right? So in that, we would look at this case play, and the case play says put 3:30 on the clock, even though we've used 15 minutes of time. Put that amount of time on the clock, and we'll go from there. Interesting scenario. And an unusual scenario, and one that we can avoid by ensuring the proper amount of time is on the clock. All right, let's spin the wheel one more time. The head coach from Team A requests a 60-second timeout to rectify a timing error. The referee grants the timeout to investigate the matter, but determines that no correction can be made. This is sounding familiar. I think I've made a mistake. Which is par for the course today. All right. Let's spin it one more time. .7.1. We can find that. And go here. The score is B62 and A60 when A1 is fouled with no time on the clock in the fourth period. The horn sounds immediately after the foul is called. Team A is not in the bonus, but erroneously, A1 is awarded a bonus free throw and makes both free throws to tie the score. Team B controls the jump to start the overtime, and B1 scores to make it 64-62. Before the ball becomes live on the subsequent throw-in, the scorer alerts the officials regarding a correctable error. All right. 2-point lead, foul at the buzzer. Erroneously, bonus free throws are awarded, and the player makes both free throws to tie the score and send the game into overtime, and an extra period will be played. After the game has resumed in that extra period, Team B controls the jump and scores to make it 64-62. Okay? Now, we know that correctable error timeframes can occur over and between periods, right? That's critical to understand with a correctable error timeframe, right? We understand that that's possible, but we always have to evaluate correctable error situations based on that time frame. So, with no time left on the clock, the officials erroneously awarded bonus free throws. These were not merited free throws, and they were awarded. The points were scored, and the game was resumed in overtime, right? So if we think about what's our correctable error time frame in overtime where we could, this is a great play scenario, where we could correct the score. All right, this is it. This is it. Okay. Let's think it through. We're in overtime now. We toss the ball. The ball is tipped and controlled by Team B in the backcourt, right? This refers to our play scenario from earlier. Bop, 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 ref, bop, 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 right? Our table says, wait a minute. We did not have 7 team fouls. Those were erroneous free throws, right? The clock shows 3:45 at this point, and the officials are presented with this situation. How would we adjudicate that? Right? That's one thing we have to consider. But let's also think about our play scenario as it's going here. Team B controls the ball. They go down and they score. Right? This is something different. So now our correctable error time frame. Let's evaluate it. The ball, erroneous free throws were awarded. The ball became live in the overtime period. Team B went down and scored. the ball became dead. Live, dead. Both scenarios really exciting and interesting. Let's look at the ruling on the play. The error is corrected by canceling the 2 erroneous free throws. However, once the overtime started, with the ball becoming live, the extra period cannot be canceled even though the points were. The score is 64-60, and the overtime continues with a throw-in by Team A. Right? So, our correctable error time frame, the ball became live in overtime, team controlled it, went down, scored, the ball became dead. Before the ball becomes live on the subsequent throw-in, the scorer alerts the officials regarding the correctable error situation. We are within our correctable error time frame. So, we're within the correctable error time frame, even though it spanned between periods, okay, into overtime, and if the correction was made, right, then we wouldn't have played overtime. Even those things are true. Once overtime begins, we're going to play. We can make correctable errors adjustments at that point, and that's what the ruling is on this play. Corrected by canceling the 2 erroneous free throws, even though that would have meant we didn't play overtime. However, once the overtime starts, with the ball becoming live on a jump ball to start overtime, it's when the ball is released by the tossing official. The extra period cannot be canceled even though the points were. We have the correct score, and we're going to resume with an end-line throw-in, non-designated spot throw-in, right? So a great scenario to think through, right? All of the basics, okay? Correctable error time frame can span periods. Once we start overtime, overtime will be played. We can make corrections, but we're going to play overtime in that situation. A great scenario, right? So we go back to the first scenario where the ball is tossed, and as soon as Team B has the ball, or even before Team B has the ball in the backcourt, the timer is like, hey, don't play overtime. We discovered, we found a mistake. Once overtime has begun, it will be played. Let's spin it. We're down to 2 scenarios. Make your bets. A1 fouls B2. The scorer notifies the nearest official that this is A1's 5th foul. The official notifies the coach of Team A of the disqualification. The official then instructs the timer to begin the 15-second replacement period. The official then notifies A1. After 10 seconds have elapsed, the captain of Team A or the captain of Team B requests a timeout. Super simple, right? When we have a player disqualification, nothing will happen in the game until the replacement player has been beckoned onto the court. Really simple, and having a basic understanding of player disqualification, again, is something that we could take with us onto the basketball court. When we have a disqualified player situation, we're not granting any timeouts until the replacement player is in. We are in no rush to grant timeouts in that situation. That was the comment on the previous case play. No rush, ball's dead, dot our I's, cross our T's, get that player in the game. Team A, you want the timeout? Hey, let's grant the timeout. Team B, you want the timeout? Let's grant the timeout. Right? Simple and straightforward. All right. The suspense. What's it going to be? All right, our final case play. Okay, this is a good one. Following a timeout, both teams are at the sideline with the respective coaches after all signals have been given prior to a throw-in by Team A. Team A or Team B requests a timeout, A, before or B, after the official places the ball on the floor at the throw-in spot. So our official is, both teams have failed to make themselves available for the resulting throw-in. The official puts the ball on the floor at the throw-in spot. Right? So we need to know what that means. The ball is now available to the thrower, and the ball has become live in this instance. Those are key components as to who can request a timeout after the ball is at the disposal of the thrower and the ball has become live. Or obviously those things go together, right? So that's the essence of this play scenario. So if Team A, who when they have the ball for a throw-in, has license to request a timeout, whereas Team B, after the ball has become live for a throw-in, does not have license to be granted a timeout. So in this instance, Team A should be granted, Team B should not be granted. Let's take a look. Oh, okay. So before the ball has been placed on the floor, either team may request a timeout. That's pretty straightforward. Once the ball is placed on the floor, Team A may, but Team B may not be granted a timeout after the ball is at A's disposal. And by rule, the ball is at the disposal when the official places the ball on the floor in the absence of a thrower in this situation after a timeout. So a good scenario, one that gives us, makes us think through when the ball becomes live on a throw-in in this situation, using this procedure when teams are not making themselves available. Before the ball is placed on the floor, the ball is dead, right? Either team may request. Any of the 5 players from either team or the head coaches from either team may request. Once the ball has been placed on the floor for the throw-in, the ball has become live. Team B no longer has the ability to do that. Now, based on our previous scenario, Team B coach says, timeout, timeout. Official grants the timeout. What happens next? Team B is granted the timeout erroneously. They must take the timeout, etc. Right? So we can put case plays together, right? Start to build our knowledge so that we can take the rules with us onto the basketball court. Thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I appreciate it. It's been a challenge. If this is content that you find valuable as a basketball official, now would be a great time to do all the things. Hit like, subscribe, and notify so you get alerted whenever we have new content here at A Better Official. Appreciate the support of our fantastic show supporters: Jeet Gulati, Jose Lansang Jr., Brian Maki, Tyler Matlock, and Thomas Hennian. Much appreciated and much love. You want to support the show? You can always head to abetterofficial.com/coffee, link above, and in the show notes below. Additional video content is available for you here. This is a video that I've chosen. This is a video that YouTube thinks you should watch. Make your choice. Choose wisely. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.